Hello everybody. So, since my last video took way too long to come out relative to the amount of work that it was actually required for it, I'm coming back at you again already today playing some Shadows of the Empire, which is kind of in line with what I'm going to talk about, which is the name of Nintendo's next console. So, I have a prediction for what Nintendo's next console is going to be called. And as is good practice with any prediction, I want to get it out as soon as possible so that way it can be immortalized and, in whenever Nintendo actually does reveal their next system and its name, then we can all find out whether I was right or wrong. So, to get into before I kind of tell you my prediction, I want to explain a couple things with the naming of Nintendo's consoles, which is that Nintendo's consoles and games often share naming conventions. You can probably think of a lot of examples like, Super Mario, Super Metroid, Star Fox 64, Mario Kart Wii, New Super Mario Bros. U, and 1-2 Switch. And if you think about the reason why they're able to do this is because all these games are exclusive, or at least the vast majority are, and the vast majority as well were developed in-house by Nintendo. So the hardware, or the consoles, and the software, or the games, were developed in tandem at the same time by the same people. And that's something that you don't really see in gaming much at all these days. It's more common in the earlier days of console gaming, and it's one of the things that I do really miss. I do really miss about gaming these days, but it's cool that Nintendo still does it, and it's something that they continue on even to this day. With the example of 1-2 Switch and other things like that. So that's the first thing that I want you to remember, is that there's always parity between the consoles and the games as far as naming goes. The second thing I want you to think about is that Nintendo is in a similar spot to naming their next console as they were with the Wii U. Now, if you remember when the Wii was out, it was super successful, and Nintendo, going into their next platform, wanted to kind of capitalize on that and continue that because they had built up all this momentum that whole generation of the popularity of the Wii. But the issue is they leaned a little too hard into the Wii part of it, to where the Wii U was not well presented as a new platform, not well presented as a new console. You can look, and if you probably remember, a lot of the impressions and understanding that people had about the Wii U was just that, oh, it's a tablet controller for the Wii. Oh, cool. Who cares? And so out the gate, the Wii U was already fighting an uphill battle that it horribly lost. So Nintendo is in a similar point with the Switch, where the success of the Switch is so high that they do want to continue that, and it seems like they're continuing that with the hardware, right? Because we know it's going to be a portable machine, again, the hybrid, right? So we know it's going to be a hybrid like the Switch, and they want to ride that success. So a lot of that leads a lot of people to think that they are in a similar spot that they were with the Wii, where they want to do an iteration on the Switch name. So you've probably heard things like the Super Switch, or different things like that, or the Switch Pro. Word names like that go around because it makes sense that Nintendo would want to continue to build on that momentum they had gained in this whole last generation with the Switch. But I do want to kind of throw a wrench in that idea by saying that the Switch gimmick and the Switch name, or the hybrid console and the Switch name, are not really mutually exclusive. It's a lot different than with the Wii, where Wii was a unique name that they had come up with that encapsulated their whole platform, right? And the entire success of that console. With Switch, it's a little bit different because the concept is what resonates with people, and Switch isn't really, it's just kind of there, as far as the name goes. It's just kind of the name that they thought of to describe this feature. But the feature, or the main selling point of the Nintendo Switch, of it being a portable console that you can use either on a TV or on the go, that is the main appeal. And the name Switch doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's a huge part of it, obviously, with the main feature, right, of switching between the two. But it's not something that you need to have, especially because if you try to explain what a Wii is, or what the Wii is, you need to demo the games, the controller, all that stuff, and you need to actually get some hands-on experience with it. With the Switch, with a picture, you can understand what they're going for. You can understand what the gimmick is, right? When you see when you see the idea that the screen pulls out of the dock with the controllers and they're detachable, you get, okay, this is a game console that can switch between TV play and handheld play. So it's a lot easier to sell people on that and get people to understand that without the Switch name. And we've really seen that with all the portable consoles, handheld gaming machines like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, and all these different things that have come out since the success of the Switch. So, now, with that in mind, they don't necessarily need to use Switch in the name, right? Now, that being said, that leaves a lot of options for what they would do instead. One option that some people might have thought of is the idea of using a synonym for Switch. For example, the Swap or the Go. But that almost makes things more confusing in some ways, because it feels like they nailed the name Switch on the first time, and so trying to come up with something else to just describe the same thing seems a little redundant, and seems like it wouldn't work out very well. It'd make things a little bit too confusing, almost like the opposite of the Wii U problem, right? Like if they named the Wii U, like, I don't know, the Portal, I don't know, whatever you call it, it would have created that same issue, right? So, with these two things in mind, I mean, you might be thinking to yourself, Dash, they've basically just made it to where it could be anything based on what you've explained, right? And that's true. However, I do want to, and this is where my prediction comes in, I want to propose a name that I think would fit well, given these circumstances, these things that we've gone over. So, what's another word maybe that Nintendo has used in some capacity in the past, whether it's with their games or with their hardware, or a name or a word that maybe they like to use, but hasn't really been used in a ton of different ways before? And there might be one that's coming to mind, and I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the Nintendo 64, the Shadows of the Empire, as one of its main sellers, right? The Nintendo 64. Is there another word that's associated with the Nintendo 64? The console itself. The one that might be coming to your mind is Ultra. So, remember, for those of you who don't know, the Nintendo 64 was originally revealed under the name Nintendo Ultra 64. And the idea was that it was so powerful, it was such a powerful system, and the Ultra really sold that, really showed that. And the 64 part being obviously that it was 64 bits and everything, right? However, obviously, before the release of the console, they scrapped that name. Because, just having the Ultra or just having the 64 makes more sense than having Ultra 64. It's like almost redundant in that way. Because 64, back when people understood and cared about bits, right, with the bit wars, with the consoles of those early generations, that number was better understood more widely and meant more. It was a bigger deal, right? Kind of like an example that you could think of is, putting 4K in the name of a console nowadays. It's that same idea. So, I mean, yeah, they were going to use Ultra for the N64 at one point. That wouldn't really be super convincing to me, at least, if that was all I was working with, right? However, they have used it a little bit more recently, have they not? I mean, there was Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, but that nobody really likes to talk about that game, so we'll discount that. But what's another time that Nintendo has used the word Ultra recently? Yes, that's right. In Tears of the Kingdom 2023 Zone, Tears of the Kingdom came out, what was it, like a week, 2 weeks after Jedi Survivor. Tears of the Kingdom used that with one of the core mechanics and features of the game, Ultra Hand, in Tears of the Kingdom. So, you might be thinking to yourself, Dash, why would they use the word Ultra? Why would they go back to Ultra? Does it make sense with the console? Why would calling it the Ultra matter? Because then it just seems like you're calling it like a random word, right? However, the reason why I think that Nintendo might use Ultra somewhere in their console, in their name, is because of what the rumors have said that the system can do. Apparently, it was shown behind closed doors at Gamescom with some sort of demo where it was running like a super souped up, maxed out settings version of Breath of the Wild, like 4K 60 FPS, ray tracing, whatever else, DLSS was one of the things they talked about. And the other demo was the Matrix Awakens Unreal Engine 5 demo. And that's a PS5, Xbox Series X. So that's catching up to current gen, which is something that is pretty insane because that's not a place that Nintendo has been at since the GameCube. If you all remember, the Wii was basically just like a little bit more powerful version of the GameCube, and then it, obviously, rode off of its gimmick, right? And the games that were based around the motion controls and everything, and that's where all the development time went. Same thing with the Wii U. It was just a little bit powerful, and it kind of got up to like the Xbox 360 levels, right? But then obviously that was right before the PS4 and Xbox One came out and just completely cleaned house with it, right? And then the Switch was the same thing. It was just a slightly better Wii U that was releasing in this weird, kind of weird middle time in between the console generations around the same time that we got the Pro model of the PS4 and the Xbox One X, which were both just kind of like updates to 8th gen consoles, right? So, we know it's going to be a more powerful system than, comparatively than the Nintendo has had since 2001, which is crazy to think about. So I think Ultra in that context makes a lot of sense. I think it makes sense that they would use Ultra in that way for their console, because what they're selling it on this time is the power. Last time they were selling it on the portability, but now that they've got the portability, we all know that that's happening. Now they can really bring the power. They can bring the juice, so to speak. They can bring these experiences that are in line with what we're experiencing now with the current gen systems. So, it's going to be called Nintendo Ultra, right? That's what I'm saying. So, I do think that oftentimes, Nintendo likes to do kind of like compound words. Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo Entertainment System are really good examples of kind of these compound words. GameCube is another really good example. And I can see that Nintendo would want to do something like that. Whether it's just the Ultra, which I suppose I could see them just calling it the Ultra, but I think Ultra's a little bare bones. I'm glad they went with 64 for the N64, but and not just Ultra. So I'm trying to think about it, and I'm thinking about what would they do, because I feel like they would give it a little bit more flavor, a little bit more character to it. Not just call it the Nintendo Ultra, because that could be anything, right? That could be anything. It's not very descriptive of a console. The Nintendo Ultra could be like a controller. You have no clue, right? So the way I think Nintendo would go to solve this is they would call it, and this is my prediction. Write it down. Take notes. They're going to call it. My prediction is that they're going to call their next console the Ultra Game. That's what it is. Nintendo Ultra Game. I think that sounds like a fitting name that is in line with the company's history. We've seen that there's parity with that word that's been used for a long time with Nintendo, and it's something they're still using today. And I think it just makes sense. I think it makes sense, and I think that would be a cool name. And they would be learning from their mistakes during the Wii U while also bringing in a name that feels fitting and it feels like it's in line with everything else, but it's also something new and it's able to describe the amount of power, the extra amount of power that's being brought into this new system. And then we can get into, all the fun names for games and things that you use in games, and we can only dream about what those are going to be. So that's my prediction. The Nintendo Ultra Game. It's apparently going to come out sometime next year, but hopefully this was entertaining. Let me know what your Switch 2 name predictions are, I guess, in the comments. And let's just see how long it takes for Nintendo to just completely prove me wrong. Like, with any luck, me posting this prediction video will force Nintendo's hand to come out and swiftly prove me wrong and reveal the new system. Something that they probably weren't planning on doing originally for another 6 months or so. So hopefully that's what happens, and we can all hope. But in any case, thank you. I've been Rendar, and until next time, take care.